Welcome to the Ardan Labs podcast. Our special guest today is Ali H. I'm going to go H, and you're going to tell everybody the rest of your name.
Sure. Hey guys. Hi Bill. It's good to be here. My name is Ali Hafizji, but you can call me Ali.
Nice, nice. My wife's Colombian. Everybody speaks Spanish in the house. I can't even speak Spanish, to the point where sometimes I just go out of my way to say it poorly because I just can't say it properly. Kevin, our producer, sees me do that in the house sometimes, and he's laughing. So that's cool. All right, Ali, give everybody the 2-minute spiel on what you're doing today.
Okay, so I'm the founder of a company called Wednesday. Wednesday is a 60-person product engineering agency based out of India. And while most agencies sell people's time, we are selling wide sprints. So our unit of doing business is a sprint, which means that we charge customers a fixed price, whether something takes 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And we like this kind of business model where, we charge for an outcome and not time. And customers seem to like it and has helped us build a little bit of trust with the people that we've been working with. So that's what I'm doing, just building products.
Okay, a couple things. Why the name Wednesday? That's interesting.
Yeah, that's actually so my co-founder and I, before Wednesday we used to work together at another startup that I was running, and a lot of projects that we were building at that time, we would give them names out of like Norse mythology, something like Thor or Odin, something like that. And these were GitHub projects. And when we decided to do a consulting company, we said that, we'll try and find something in the Norse, terminology. Um, and the day that we created the company was a Wednesday, and one of Odin's names is Wednesday, and he's like the god of wisdom.
Oh, I
So
didn't know
it
that.
just felt right.
Oh, I didn't realize that was part of that. You're based out of India, you said, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where in India?
I'm in a city called Pune. Have you been? Have
I've
you
been
been
to
to anywhere in
Pune.
India?
I've been
Really?
to Bangalore, Pune, and Goa. Pune's my
Fantastic.
favorite out of the three. So
Really, I
um,
would have assumed you would have said Goa.
I'm not a beach person, man. I honestly didn't like Goa. I just wasn't my vibe, man. I live in Miami, dude. Like if I have the beach here, right?
Hmm.
Like I don't. It's not my thing. Sit on the beach and drink and I don't know.
What'd you like about Pune?
I just thought Pune was a little bit more relaxed than Bangalore. I
Yeah,
thought
that's for
I could
sure.
handle the city. I can't handle the
Yeah.
city in Bangalore, dude. I grew up in New
Yeah.
York, like New York City, and I can
Yeah.
predict everything that's happening around me. And I felt comfortable in Pune, but in Bangalore, oh, no, dude. There's just too many people doing too many things.
Yeah, it's gotten
It's
worse.
too much.
When was it? When were you? Yeah. What year was that?
That would have been like 2018 was probably the last time I
Okay.
was there.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
things have gotten much worse than that.
Oh, that's wild. You know, my favorite thing was going into some building and they wanted the serial number of my MacBook. I think that was in Bangalore. I was going somewhere, or it might have been Pune, Bangalore. And I looked at the guy and I'm like, "You want my serial number?" He's like, "Yeah." So I just scribbled a bunch of letters and numbers on the page because I'm like, I don't know, what are we doing here, man? Oh, it's wild. All right. This is a podcast about you, and we're gonna talk about your journey to Wednesday. Before we do, my company Ardan Labs is sort of in the same business.
Hmm.
We do consulting, we do projects, we do training.
Hmm.
So we're kind of in the same business. But this idea of selling a sprint, I just want to talk about that for 5 minutes before we jump in the time machine because my brain can't handle understanding that. So
Hmm.
is there still a resource count to the sprint, or is it just about I'm going to throw whoever I have to at it to get
Hmm.
this sort of amount of work done that we've agreed to at I'm assuming a 2-week block?
Yeah, so you're right. It is a 2 week block. That's typically how I've seen people do that. Um, but before we actually start doing a sprint, we have sort of like a planning phase that we call a sprint zero that determines, what is the pace at which we need to deliver the backlog for this particular person. And that helps us identify, roughly what is the resourcing requirement here, whether it's going to be like 2 engineers, 3 engineers, five, or what have you. But once we commit to that, and once we say that, okay, we've done our estimation, we know what we need to achieve, um, then it's just sprint on sprint. Um, but what I've seen is, and we didn't come to selling sprints right from the get-go. We started doing, the typical time and material. I mean, you're aware of that kind of business model. But there are some issues with that. It is ultimately an arbitrage that you're running here, right? You charge X and you pay Y. We just didn't want to do that. We were just constantly trying to think, how can this business model change? And I think AI changed everything because the rate at which you can actually build now is much faster. So the risk reduces. So we can commit to, delivering what we promise in a sprint.
My
Yeah.
biggest concern
Uh-huh.
has always been that even at a sprint level, something comes
Mm-hmm.
up, you got to pivot. What you thought you were going to do on Monday now changes on Wednesday because
Mm-hmm.
you've learned something. And I
Mm-hmm.
always hated the fixed bid model because
Mm-hmm.
it because what would happen is that you have to tell the client, I know that this isn't what we should be doing anymore, but this is what we agreed to on paper. So I'm going to finish this work even though we don't need any of it anymore, right? And I hated having to do that because if you're going to lock down that level of granularity on what we're going to deliver, that's the agreement, right? Even if it's no longer valid. So how do you deal with building product where things are changing, priorities have to change, and still giving the customer what we all agree to?
Yeah, so I think the model that you described is pretty much what Agile solved in a way, right? And what they said was, instead of delivering everything in a sort of rigid manner, which is sequential, let me get the requirements and then build that out, we'll sort of deliver in smaller chunks and allow for change. Um, The model that we use is very, very similar. It's not like I'm planning 3 months out or 6 months out. We're going to plan out at least 2 to 3 sprints, but we understand largely what is the pace over here. For example, if we're working with a founding team or founders, we have a good idea of the 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 user base that they have access to that is going to use this particular product. So we know how to prioritize. So we're just planning a few sprints out and not too much. But the sprint just being 2 weeks, long, it allows for change. So if you want to change, in the next one, that's fine. We'll reprioritize, we'll re-estimate, but we'll still charge you per sprint. So I think change management is largely okay because it's still working in the same format as Agile, but the pricing is different. And the reason why we're calling it a vibe sprint is because it's AI powered, where we're doing a lot of things differently in the Agile sprint as well, and we can talk more about that.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. But my brain kind of just says, even if I'm offering a person at $20 an hour, right,
Hmm.
for 40 hours a week, I mean, there's technically fixed pricing there, right? You know what you're
Hmm.
going to pay every week, and this person's going to give you those 40 hours. And if they don't, you're not going to pay for an hour, right? So you've kind of taken that idea, but you've moved it into this sort of deliverable instead of
Correct.
yeah,
And
trying
the
to.
the
But isn't that a
I'll tell
lot of
you,
work? Isn't there a lot of paperwork involved in that with between you and the client?
I mean,
It's an
the
interesting model. My brain
yeah.
is just going 1,000 miles
No,
an
and you're
hour.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Implementing this at a ground level is a challenge. But the entire idea of differentiation is so amazing if you think about it, especially in B2B services. I've realized that even though people pay so much attention to differentiation in services, um, The model remains the same. So the only thing that we've done is we've taken something that's familiar, but made it unfamiliar. So people are aware of how do you buy B2B services. Most of the purchasers of like B2B product engineering services, at least the mature ones, they are aware of a certain business model, which is exactly like how you said it, which is, offshore, low cost, I get time. I've just taken something familiar and made it unfamiliar by giving you an outcome. So you're not really a task machine anymore. You're not just telling people what to do all the time. And that's that's pretty much the change, and the business model supports that thinking. And that is, at least in my experience from the customers that we have worked with this new model, we've onboarded 10 customers, and there's just a natural trust that builds in just when you're sending that first proposal where people are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So you're telling me that if you promise me to finish ABC in 2 weeks, but it takes 3 weeks, I still pay the same. I'm like, yeah, you still pay the same. And it just makes sense, you know?
But this ends up
Um,
really being project work, right? Like this is a company that says, I've got these tasks. You're not going to integrate with the existing dev team. I just
mhm.
need you to get these sort of things done. So it's also like project work where you can sort of fix bid an estimate on that anyway.
So we've seen this happen both ways. We've seen it happen in the model that you're mentioning, where somebody comes to us and says, I need this, and I'm going to tell them you need 4 vibe sprints. That's it. Just pay us for that. But we've also seen entrepreneurs come to us with a problem statement saying that, I've got this MVP that I've built using no code tools. I've got like 50 customers that I can, go and sell this to because I know them. I need a team that can help me go from MVP to PMF. This is the problem statement that I'm going after. And then we would do like a sort of a product thinking, planning exercise and identify what will the first 1 month look like, and then we sort of go from there. We do more ideation and keep planning sprints with them. So it works both ways. Uh,
My
it's just in the second one. Go ahead.
last
Yeah.
question, and then we're going to jump in the time machine. One of my other big concerns in this business that we're in, right,
Hmm.
is you're offering another individual a job so they can put milk on the table and
Hmm.
support their families, right? And so for me, I feel like there's a responsibility that if I'm going to hire you to work on something, that I can at least guarantee you 3 months of work, 6 months of work, right? Like I don't want to, if I hire you and then 3 weeks later you're gone, you have to go. Like to me, that it just bothers me internally, right? I always want to make sure there's longevity. And so, how does that work with the sprint model? If you're being contracted at 2 weeks at a time, and now they decide, 2 sprints in, we don't want this anymore. Like, what happens to those people?
Well, nothing happens to those people. I mean, everybody who works at Wednesday is working full time and nothing happens to them at all. Um, that's never really happened to us because I think, product engineering is a constant endeavor. You build something, you take it to market, you learn something, you build something new. Um, I've never seen a project end at 2 sprints, but I think what customers like is not having that lock-in, just in the form of a business model. And we also need to, like, we are like a relatively young company in an extremely competitive space. And we needed to like really differentiate ourselves, which is what I was talking about. Like, I just took something familiar and made it unfamiliar and made it new. But, typical projects are anywhere between like 6 months to a year is what we've seen. And then the ones who actually cross or meet certain growth marks within their niche, they go on for longer. um but yeah, I mean,
What's your
yeah,
tech niche? Are you guys doing front end, back end?
over full
What's your
stack, so we've done like everything from mobile to web to backend to date, like, so there are 3 areas of expertise, which is, application development across web, mobile, TV, data engineering, and applied AI. These are the 3 things that we work in, and that's primarily because of me and my co-founder. Our experience has been in these areas. So we just decided to use that expertise, build that into services.
All right, sweet. All right, we're gonna get back to this conversation. I had to scratch an itch there, and I had to ask some questions. So that's really
No, and
interesting.
I'd love to learn from your experience, by the way. I'm trying to do something new here, and we're extremely young in a small team, and we're just trying to find our place in this crowded space. But I know that you've been doing it far longer than I have, so
No, I mean at the end of the day, if you're getting clients and you're keeping them for a year or more, you're doing well as far as I'm concerned. Like
okay.
as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if you get 2 years with a client, you've done really, really well. 3 years is almost unheard of. And it's just because industry changes, companies change,
Of
management
course.
changes,
Hmm.
the market changes. So it has nothing to do with your company at that point. It just has to do with life, right?
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
and so if you're telling me, yeah, we're getting clients and we're holding them on, we're holding them for a good year, and the staff we put on those clients have stable income, like that's the home
Hmm.
run, right? Like that's the home run. The pricing is all about the margin you're going to make. So if you keep making a mistake on what it took, right, then you'll be out of business real soon.
Hmm.
Because if you're not making what 25, almost 30% margin on the work you're doing, you can't stay in business. That's just life, right? I don't even hide that to anybody. It's just a
Hmm.
company should be making somewhere between 20 and 30% profit,
Hmm.
where 20% is on the low side, right? I mean, if you're not making those numbers, you're not in business very long. I just get really scared on sort of fixed bid pricing and fixed work pricing
Yeah,
because, again, things change and I want to make sure that even if I might find something for my client, I want to be able to pivot and make sure we're building exactly what they need at any moment in time. So I've always
makes sense.
early on in the business we did stuff like you're talking about, sort of fixed bid. This is what we'll build. It always this is what we this is a great saying that somebody told me one time. In the beginning it's a negotiation and then after it's an argument, right? And so you're negotiating the work, you're negotiating the deliverables, you're negotiating all of that. And the moment any of it has to change, for better or worse, it now turns into an argument,
Mm.
right? And I've just learned over time I've wanted to avoid any negotiation turning into an argument sort of later on. And how do you do that? That being said,
Interesting.
we don't get a lot of project work where we could even really fix bid it. And again, I try to avoid that to some extent again because I want the flexibility. But I'm kind of curious right before we jump into the time machine too. Where are the majority of your clients located? Are they in India or have you gotten clients outside of India?
It's a split, I would say, equally between. Well, actually, no, it's not really a split. Its majority would be in the US now. About 70% of our clientele would be in the US. We have about 14, 15 customers. Each team is about 3 to 5 people. Um, and then, they go through their own, cycle of ups and downs as these businesses grow, raise money, et cetera, et cetera. They're in different development and product engineering cycles.
How do you
But yeah,
deal with the 10 and a half hour time zone from the East Coast to
yeah,
India is
yeah,
it's a nightmare. Like
yeah.
I can never adjust when I'm in
Tell me about
India.
it.
I can't talk to anybody when I'm here and it like you're you're never awake or asleep. You never wake at the same time. Let's just put it that way. That's an
Hmm.
incredibly large challenge. How are you solving that problem of communication?
I don't really think, I think everyone needs to find their own solution to this problem. For us, I think we've just been blessed to have customers that are, just cognizant of the fact that we are in a different time zone and they are very, very flexible. Sometimes they're available in our mornings. They plan well. They make sure that, a lot of communication can happen async. And we've sort of solved that problem in that way. But we are supporting many customers who are in production, and many a times, you need to have that roster of people available on standby. There may be reliability issues, etc. So we do sort of maintain that, let's say a 5-person team, one person is available. and they sort of take the next day off, something like that. So we do have that kind of a roster system as we support customers through different journeys. We have
And that's
had that.
fixed bid, and that's fixed bid
No,
too
no,
at a
no.
sprint.
This is all per
Service.
sprint. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's just sprint on sprint. They just keep paying us. But it's never going to be, I'm going to charge X dollars per person. It's always going to be a sprint, and that may involve a certain quantum of work that we promise you to do.
Including any service, like these people that are on call are
Yes,
part of
yes.
that.
So there
Yeah.
would be a different, sort of a model there that we would charge for, but it would still be priced at a sprint rather than a person.
Okay. All right, sweet. Well, we're gonna get back all that. So we're gonna jump in the time machine. There's two questions that I need to ask you that we
Okay.
start off. The first question is, what year was it when you graduated high school or the equivalent of high school?
I graduated 2004. 2004 was when I graduated high school, and then I went to college.
No, no, no. Don't, yeah, don't tell me anything about
Okay.
colleges yet. Don't tell me about
Okay.
that yet. Um, and then I want you to sort of clear your mind,
Hmm.
and the first memory you have of hacking on a computer. Tell me that first memory.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. So I was actually introduced to software development or just programming in general in school. We had this really nice teacher, and she was sort of teaching us HTML. And it was like the weirdest way in which you could learn HTML, because she would actually project herself writing HTML, and we would write it in a notebook. And then my father had bought us a Pentium 340 with an external floppy disk. And I would go back home and actually type that out in Notepad and then try and run that HTML file. And that's how I learned, just HTML and how do you build web pages. That was like a very, very interesting experience for me. And it was also a very fond memory, because after that class, so I was born in India, but I was raised in Dubai. So my dad had a job in Dubai, and I was raised there until high school. And then my dad shipped me back to India to finish my college and higher education. I just decided to
So
stay
you
here.
did high school in Dubai.
Yeah, I did high
Oh,
school in
interesting.
Dubai.
Wow.
Yeah.
You might be the first person I've ever talked to that did high school in Dubai. So is it similar? You're going to finish at 17, 18 years old and
Yeah, yeah, very similar. It's almost the same. But Dubai has this very weird, I mean, I think it's okay for them. They have this policy that if you are a boy, if you're a male, and you finish high school, you cannot be on your father's visa anymore. You have to either join a, university in Dubai, which is extremely expensive, and get a student visa, or you need to go
leave.
back. Yeah, leave. And my dad had made it very clear to me that he's not going to pay, the expensive fees that these universities in Dubai are going to charge. So it was very clear to me from a very young age that I need to go back to India. So yeah, I mean, I
So let me
think,
ask
yeah,
you then, because in India you have to take the test,
yeah,
right? And you
yeah,
have to score on that test to determine where you're
yeah,
going to go.
yeah.
But you didn't go to school in India, so if you're going to go to university at that point, do you have to go back and take the same exam, right?
Yeah, so it was actually different for me at that time. So back then, when I was sort of applying to when I came to India, they did, as long as you are of Indian origin and you have studied in a school that was providing an education that they recognized, they still allowed you to give the test. But now that has changed. You need to be in a school in India. But that wasn't applicable at my time, so I was still allowed to give the test. I, did well there, and I got a good university to sort of go and study at.
Come on, well, I always have to ask everybody what their number was on the test. Or
I
you
don't
like,
remember.
you don't
I don't
remember.
remember. It was like
But you,
340 or something. I don't know. Yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
meet all these people with these low numbers. It's mind blowing to me. Um, were you worried about the test, or you just it's you knew that like it
Um,
wasn't going to be? I imagine everybody's studying for that exam. I mean, people are studying for that exam prior
yeah.
to taking it. You must have known you had to take it. So
Yeah. No, I think it's become far more competitive now, but I think at my time it was more about, the amount that you practice, and you just need to make sure that you're able to attempt all the questions. I think it's a game of just managing your time well, you know. You can't get anxious mid-paper and then, you lose out. So I think it's more a game of managing your time and managing your nerves than anything else. But yeah,
But so then, when you're in Dubai for those last 4 years, right, in high
yeah.
school, what are you interested in? Are you doing anything with sports or music or arts or?
I was definitely into sports, but I was a swimmer. So I used to swim a lot. I was definitely into computers. I was I was best friends with my PlayStation. So I was
I
doing a
like
lot of
that.
games.
That I've never heard before. I was best friends with my PlayStation. That's hilarious, man. That's good. So when you weren't hanging out with your friend, you were in the pool.
Yeah, or at school or doing something like that. But yeah, yeah, I think I come from a family where, my parents are working class. I think, hard work and, all of these values, just do your job well was sort of ingrained in us from a very young age. So whatever I took up, I was pretty much doing it really well as far as I remember.
How many siblings do you have?
I have two siblings, an elder brother and a younger sister. I'm the one in the
So
middle.
you're the middle child. You're the
Yeah,
problem child. You're in
I'm
the
the
middle.
problem child. I'm the one. That's me.
All right. So you must have been bummed out having to go back, having to not go back because you didn't really grow up in India. Like you didn't know
Yeah.
India, right? Like
Yeah.
that had to be hard.
Yeah. It's a huge change. I mean, Dubai is a very different place compared to India. But I had no choice. And I had to sort of suck it up and, accept that I'm going to be here. But it was difficult during the initial months, but then I actually enjoyed being here because I remember my brother was already here because he's a year elder to me and he came a year before me. I remember having that conversation with my brother and he was very clear right from an early right from the time that he got here that he will go back. He'll find a job there and he will go back. But I was sort of on the edge. I didn't know what I wanted. But I started to really enjoy it. It's a nice feeling to be in a place where you're not really worried about your visa. Um, you can do whatever you want. It is your country. Um, and yeah, I think that feeling was new to me, having grown up in Dubai. And it was
And
something that I enjoyed.
You went to Pune.
Yeah, I went to Pune. I came directly here. And
But there's a
so,
culture shock because even your peers who grew up there have a certain
yeah,
level of knowledge, understanding of India, the culture, all of that. Like you come in and you're in, right? You're a national, right? You're Indian, but at the same time, you must not feel there's a piece missing. I have to imagine, at least in
yeah.
that first year. Yeah.
Here at Ardan Labs, we believe in empowering companies to reach their full potential through innovative technology solutions. Trusted by small startups and Fortune 500 companies alike, we specialize in high-performance software consulting, training, staffing, development, and now AI. With over 14 years of experience, Ardan Labs has trained over 30,000 engineers and served over 1,000 companies worldwide. Whether you're mastering Go, Rust, Kubernetes, Terraform, or blockchain, we're your strategic partner for performance-grade solutions. Let's elevate your tech journey together. Reach out to Ardan Labs today.
Oh yeah, it's extremely difficult. It's a culture shock. But I mean, I was coming from a place where I had no choice. I had to adjust. I had to
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
Nobody was going to change for me, so it was this or nothing. But it was
I
definitely hard.
imagine, and your parents taught you, what, which, I think there's like seven languages in India, right?
Oh,
Hindi
there much
and,
more. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, we speak Gujarati, which is part of the Western India. Uh, but yeah, Gujarati, Hindi, that's what we speak at home.
So you have that, like, it would have been really bad if you had to go back and you couldn't speak
Yeah.
the local. Okay. All right. So you take the test. You now have options for university. Was it was it in your head you're going to go take an engineering track, and then what kind of
No,
engineering?
no. So I'm gonna lie to you and say, like, if I were to tell you that, yeah, I knew what I was doing, I would probably lie to you. But um, I don't know. I knew a person who had this thing figured out, and he was a good friend of mine. And right from a very young age, I think, I come from a family where, it was sort of told to us that if you work hard, you'll make a mark on this world, and that's what you should aspire to have, and et cetera, et cetera. And I knew that if I wanted to make a mark or leave a mark, I needed to find a problem that was big enough. But I didn't know what problems to solve. So I thought that maybe if I just follow the people who are really smart, they will know more than me. So I knew a guy who pretty much had his life figured out. He knew that he was going to go get a degree in computer engineering, and study at this one university, and then go for his master's to the US, and then work for, a Google or a Microsoft, trying to build products for the world. And I was like, what you're saying makes sense. Like, I want to do that. And I sort of followed, his footsteps, and ended up doing computer engineering. Um, but yeah, um, that's how that happened.
That's cool. So you do your so you decided to do the computer engine, which basically was more of a programming like CS degree.
Yeah, CS
How did
degree,
you?
yeah,
No, no, go on, go on.
it was a combination. So it's computer engineering, but it's also got elements of electronics, electrical, microprocessors, etc. So we're doing the whole thing. So it's not just IT, but it's everything. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Because sometimes when people have a background already in doing some programming, which you did, and they enter university, either they're just like bored, or they're just like,
Mm,
this is not what I want to learn. Like, I want to do practical things.
mm.
Sort of, where were you at least in that first couple of years?
Oh no, I was enjoying myself because I never really did anything with, microprocessors or any kind of assembly language programming or anything like that. It's not like we were doing rocket science. We were just like sort of building programs that did basic things like, shifting bits or bytes or doing logic gates or something like that. But it was still a lot of fun because we were actually doing assembly language programming, and that's something that I hadn't done before. And this was on the microprocessor side, but we also did a lot of things with C and C++ back then. And I wasn't really aware of these programming languages, and that was like a whole new way of thinking about things where, one is a completely, object-oriented language, and pointers have their own learning curves. So that was a lot of fun for me. I was really enjoying myself. The first 3 years were about, learning the fundamentals of how systems are built, how computer applications are built, using all of these languages. And then the best part about college was that we had to build a final year project, which we had to do sort of in partnership with another company. So we had to actually go and find, you know, who can I work with, and sort of do an internship with them. So I ended up working with a company called Tipco. They're fairly large now, and I learned how their products work and sort of built like a middleware system for them, which is again a lot of fun. So I mean, I look back and I feel like I got a lot to learn from that. It was a fun program.
And then that whole time you're in university, I'm guessing you have to have a job. You're living with
Mhm.
your brother, right? You got
Yeah.
uh, was there family still in town too that you could go see? Or was it like your brother
Yeah.
really had it hard where he had to really sort of be alone and
Yeah.
establish?
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of family here, but I mean, we don't really meet them day to day, but it was there, somebody was there in case you need someone. But it was just me and him. He was there, the first year alone by himself. But yeah, it was just the two of us. But we figured it out. It was fun.
No, you always figure it out. You can't give up.
Yeah.
Um, But were you working then during that university stint? Because you,
No, no, I did a couple of internships, but nothing major. I mean, I remember my first paycheck was like $200, and that too for like 6 months of work. It was
oh my
nothing
God.
that I mean, it wasn't. They weren't even going to pay me, but I think they just got happy with what I did and then just offered me something. But yeah, I mean, I was primarily. I think when I look back now and I think that the dots join, I've just been really trying to solve hard problems, you know. So even when I would look for an internship, I would always try and work at a small company where I would get to do more. And I made sure that I searched for jobs like that. I would actually go and find these guys. Like, let's say I get a meeting, I would always ask, how big is your team? And then I would ask them, what's your goal? Like, what's your vision? And I would try and see, how big is this guy dreaming? And like, what is his capacity? And if there was a huge gap, I would actually get excited by that because I was like, I'll get to do more here. Um, so I guess I've always been trying to find, problems to solve, like really difficult problems to solve. Earlier, it was around, engineering, and as I moved further, it started becoming more and more abstract, which is, how do I get the first 10,000 customers for this product that I'm building?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah. Before
um,
you go there, right? Because now you're graduating university. You did your
yeah,
4 years.
yeah.
Now, is your decision to get more education or to get into the workforce?
I mean, that was a tough one for me. I mean, I was at a crossroad. Um, Half my class went to the US. They prepared for their GRE, got in, etc. But for me, I mean, I wanted to, but it was just too expensive. So I did get in. I got into the University of Southern California. And in fact, I applied to only two universities, um, but it's just too expensive. So I was left with no other choice. But I mean, looking back, I think it was probably the right decision. Um, I feel like I've just learned a lot more. Um,
Feels
but
good
I don't know.
though. It feels good to get into USC.
Yeah, it's sort
It
of like a
feels good.
pat on your back, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, you gotta. I mean, I'm a
yeah.
Notre Dame fan, so we don't like USC during college football season, but well, it's okay. It's all good. So, any of the internships turn into jobs, or you had to go and find something
No,
new?
they didn't. No, so they didn't. So I actually didn't even want to go back there because many of them were facing their own challenges. Some of them were trying to raise their, sort of seed fund and things like that. Um, I actually got a job right out of college, at a startup, sort of like at another services company. And what I got, they actually had one client. They only had one client. But the customer that they were working with was doing something really interesting. So what they were doing was they took the entire, and this is during the Android Eclair days, right? So early on, like super early on, and Android was not even, there was no tablet version. It was just the phone. And they wanted to take the entire open source, stack for the Android operating system and redesign it to build a family tablet
Their own
and
hardware.
compete with their own hardware. Correct. So they partnered with ViewSonic. They had raised like a huge round of money, etc. And I thought that was a very, very interesting problem to solve because here I'm, graduating out of college. I'll get to work across the entire Android operating system, right from, building all of these apps from scratch, but for like the tablet form factor. So I just said yes and I joined them. And that was a very, very interesting time because I think that was when sort of the mobile revolution was picking up. That's the wave at which it started. It was just Android Eclair and then, iOS 4 or something like that.
This had to
And
be
then it
like
just boomed.
2008, right?
Yes,
2008.
yes.
Yeah.
Super early. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I started programming, um, and started building Android applications right at the firmware level. And that was a lot of fun, a lot of experience, a lot of good experience, a lot of good learnings there. We launched the product. They did fairly okay, I think. They launched, they built partnerships with a couple of telecoms, and they were able to get their product in the hands of a couple of users. Um, Eventually I think that once that product was built out, I think product moves into like a maintenance phase. Um, and that's when I decided that, I feel like there isn't really much to do here. And I started looking for something else.
So then, how
Uh,
long were you there for? You were there for like 2 years.
no, I was there for about a year and two
Yeah.
months, something like that. Yeah.
So that's pretty good to push a product out that quickly, especially hardware wise.
I mean, it wasn't just me, it was a pretty big team, right? So I think they had about 7, 8 folks in the US, and they were looking at the hardware and other parts. When we were just looking at the software, we were another team of 7, 8 people in India. We were just looking at the software side of things. But it was
It's
a nice
it,
experience.
it's kind of funny when you look at what the market looks like today. There is no real
Yeah,
third-party hardware anymore, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
HP or what Microsoft or what Google's putting out or what Apple's putting out.
correct.
Like even Compact is gone. Dell is still out there, but not in that space, right?
Yes.
And so it's like the big players just consumed it. But I guess at the time that didn't exist yet. I guess you still felt you had a chance to be the next BlackBerry or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. The fragmentation is over. There are just a couple of big players and they control everything. I think the players who are closest to the user, they won.
So you do a year plus there. You've gotten really good at Java, I imagine. You've gotten
Hmm.
better at C because you said you were doing some firmware stuff. Um, but now the decision that you're making is to find something new. So did
Yeah.
that decision happen after you found something or before you found something?
No, I'd already found it. And again, I feel like when I look back now, I think it's just that I was just constantly trying to find more and more, tougher problems. The minute I solved something, I was like, I need to go find something else now. And I remember why I got excited to work at this company. They were building iOS games. And I remember very, very clearly reading something online which talked about how um, so the App Store has had like this gold rush. You build anything, you get downloads. And I mean, there weren't a lot of apps at that time. And here was this company who was actually trying to build games. And I had no experience with, you know, um, Objective-C or anything of that sort. I didn't know anything about it, but it just felt really exciting because I thought that I can build Android apps. Now I can build iOS apps. I just need to go do this. So I joined, and I started
So
now
hold
to
on a
build the
second.
games.
You read something online, you start to realize that, and I do remember in that 2008, 2009, 2010, there was a sort of a gold rush for the app because
Hmm.
there weren't a lot. And if you could be the number one app, you're gonna actually make some money there. And there
Hmm.
was also prestige, right? So you
Hmm.
saw all that, and this particular company comes up, and then you decide, I want to work for that company.
Yeah,
So what? You walk over to the office, you make a phone call, you send an email.
I just sent an
Like,
email.
so you didn't really have a relationship there yet,
No,
but you just sent an email to
yeah,
somebody.
I just
Like,
sent an email. And they got excited because um, most games are actually built using a game engine. And back then, there was a game engine called Cocos 2D. I think it's still a very famous game engine um, that allowed you to build 2D sprite-based animation games. And the way that the game engine works behind the scenes is that it uses the OpenGL renderer, which is just like a language that you use to control the GPU. And among all the people who wrote to them, I was the only guy who knew how to use the OpenGL stack. Um, and I think that's why I got a response. But it worked out for me. I think I think all of these things make sense only when you look back, right? So I think it just had to happen.
so you send the email, right? You send your resume. They see OpenGL because you just got all that experience, basically
Yeah,
working on an operating system for mobile. They're like, no, you got to come over here. So you take the job, and how long are you at this job?
I was there for more than a year.
And
It
what were
was
you
actually
doing there? You were building the
just building.
games.
building games. I was just building games, a lot of games. We
In
were building
Objective-C
in
for
Objective-C.
iOS. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. Um,
What kind of
a lot of
games?
very
Like
interesting
like a
games.
Candy Crush kind of game or
No, these were mostly so let me give you an example. The games were structured to be a little educational. So for example, let's say you want to learn fractions. So you would get a Tetris kind of game that will teach you fractions. Um, or they would have a game component and some kind of teaching component. And let's say if you clear a certain level, you get to play a game, which would, let's say, be a space shooter. So it wasn't just a game. There was always like a little bit of an educational angle to it. And the company was primarily positioning itself as um, as a fun learning platform back
was
then.
their revenue model to go after the schools to
Yes.
pay to pay
That's what he,
seat?
yeah, I think that's what they eventually wanted to do, but I think they got just so lucky being so early in the App Store that every time they would release one of these apps, which was just focused around learning math, along with that, you get to play a game, they just like made like a lot of money.
So people were paying $1 to download it. Like,
Oh yeah, they were like
yeah,
a
yeah,
dollar downloaded, there was in-app purchases, all kinds of things.
yeah, yeah. So why are you only there a year? Because I feel like you could still learn things for a couple
Yeah,
of years
so
there.
yeah, interesting things happened to me during that time. So I uh there is a website. I don't know if you're aware of it. There's a guy. His name is Ray Vanderlick. He started a website back then. It's become quite famous now. And he just started writing articles about how to build iOS applications and games. And it was just him running a WordPress blog, and he started to get, you know, hundreds and thousands of people just reading his content. And he had written up a post where he said that, if anyone's interested writing for me, I'd be more than happy to pay you. So, and here am I. I know how to do Android. I know how to do iOS. I can build the same thing across both platforms. And he was just writing content for iOS. So I wrote to him and I said, you should do the same thing, but for Android. And he wrote back saying, why don't you do it?
I was
Uh,
gonna say nothing. Good, let's go, Dolly.
so I did it. And that worked out. And he had built quite a following, right? So I think this was a time at which it was just easy to grow a newsletter and things like that. So it got quite a good following on his newsletter and other mediums. So that year, along with a couple of other sort of writers for on his platform, he decided to write a book. And the book was called, I think, iOS Games by Tutorials, where every chapter was a tutorial on how to build a game. Um, and he asked me if I'd like to write a few chapters. And as all of this was going on in my life, I said that, I feel quite confident that I can, you know, do this. Um, so I started writing. I left. I started writing. I started doing a lot of content, and this is just purely long form content, writing books, etc. And I started having a lot of fun, and I, made friends with a lot of authors there. All of these guys working at different companies across the world, and it was just a really fun experience. It took us like 2 months to write down the whole thing. Um, and then I participated in the next year as well. So every year with the new Apple launch, they would write a new book, just covering all of the new advances and APIs and launches in that release. So I participated for another 2 years and wrote, and that was a fun experience. I mean, that's why I left that job. But yeah,
Wow. Yeah, no, I just looked up the book. I see 2013.
yeah.
Um, yeah, your name's right. Though you don't call yourself Ollie. Oh, yeah, the last three. I see. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
really
so
cool.
my whole name is really difficult to pronounce, so I just like shortened it to Ali.
Yeah, it's
My
good.
parents were really not the kindest with name.
But I know people don't realize how much work it is to write a book. I've written a couple.
Yeah.
And
Oh, tell me more about that. What have you written about?
I've got the Go in Action book, which I
Fantastic.
published through
Yeah.
Manning, and then I self-published the Ultimate Go Notebook. These projects take like a year or more
Yeah.
to
Good
get
stuff.
done, especially when you're on your own because you got to find time in between. It's
Mm,
just it's a lot of work. So when somebody says they wrote a book, I'm always like, you got it done. You know how many people start that and never finish it because
yeah.
it's that massive. Let me get the timeline right because you're at this gaming company, but at the
Hmm.
same time now you're blogging, you're sort of writing the book, but you're only there a year, so now it's almost like 2010. Like, what's
Yeah.
the next gig now? Now you have a book on your name. You've got people who know you because of the blogging.
Yeah.
Like, what's I guess jobs are coming at you now.
Yeah. I still, I was, I jobs were coming, but I was in a very different frame of mind where I still wanted to find something that was challenging. Um, so I already knew a company locally here. They were a travel tech company. I decided to work with them because I knew nothing about the travel business. Um, I wanted to learn something different than just consumer products. Um, and they were a B2B travel company building travel portals for some of the largest, companies in the world. Um, and they wanted to sort of build a slew of mobile products. So it was the right fit. So I worked there for
Was this
about,
like
yeah,
white label
white
stuff? They
labeled.
were okay,
They wanted
okay,
to build white label
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
That is correct. So we started building a hotel booking application that then they would offer to their clients as a white label solution. Um, but so I did that for about more than a year, I would say. They built a team as well around that, etc. But it took them some time to actually start seeing traction for what we had built. They were trying to sell it, they were talking to different customers, etc. And at that time, I was again gonna be gonna start writing the next book because the next Apple event was happening. And I remember talking to the founder of the company, and we had become good friends. And I was telling him that, looks like my work here is done, um, and I have this next thing coming. Maybe you guys can take over now. And I was still young, and he suggested that, when you finish writing, what will you do? So I told him that maybe I'll just do some consulting. I don't know. But he was like, okay, if you want to do consulting, why don't you just do it here? We will fund your company, right? So we'll help you create a new company and we will fund you as well.
First client, yeah.
So I was like, this makes sense.
It's hard to find that first client, man. It's
There's
hard.
no
So
risk here. That's my sort of first venture into entrepreneurship. Um, we created a mobile only app development services company because that's all I knew how to do. And things went quite well. I didn't know that, the people I knew were so influential because I was, writing and like doing all this stuff with all these people. And I reached out to a couple of people and I realized that, they became my first clients. I got a couple of referrals and I was drowning in work because it was just me. Um,
right, right.
so I had to hire a few people. And then that taught me a lot of things about how I suck as a manager. Um,
Accounting, payroll,
yeah, accounting,
HR.
payroll, yeah, all of
Oh
those
no,
things.
you need business
Um,
partners to do
yeah,
the work you don't want to do.
yeah. But
Sales
I had
too.
also, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Mm. But I had sort of created the company in partnership with my ex, employer. But we were profitable from day one. Like we didn't really need any funding as such because I already knew these guys. So I still ran it for about a year or so. We did very well. We were profitable. I had a small team of like 3 people. That's it. I mean, I didn't really scale beyond that because I think I just lacked the management capability at that time. Um, but I decided to sort of stop that venture there because I felt like I didn't really need another shareholder because I was doing everything myself. Um, so I sort of sold that equity back to my previous employer. And they sort of acquired stake in that business. And then I started doing things by myself again. But again, I stuck to, just writing and a little bit of consulting here or there.
This
But
is really interesting to me. When I
uh,
reached that, Arden is my second business. First
mhm,
business. Uh, we're going to talk about that. That failed miserably. But Arden is a second business. I started that with another person, my business partner Ed. But when we hit that wall that you're talking about, where
mm,
you can't grow it anymore because you just don't have enough time to do all the things you have to do,
yeah,
our decision was to take a risk, spend some money, and bring in a third person. For our case, it was sales, Miguel. And he, within a year or two, doubled everything, right? And so we've done this a couple of times where we've hit the wall and we're like, okay, we're gonna have to take the risk and invest. And
hmm
it's sort of and it's easier to take the risk now as opposed to when you were sort of smaller. But
yeah,
I find it interesting that your decision was to just sort of sell the company and go back to an easier sort of time of just being a solo entrepreneur. I mean, why not just invest in another person that can
hmm
take that leadership role and take over sales, take over, say, marketing, take over accounting?
yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right in identifying that that's the right thing to do. But for me, I think I was just not ready for it. And I kept thinking to myself that, I'm doing all the work, but I'm sharing equity with another person, which was my ex-employer. They're not really doing anything. Should I be spending more time doing this? Shouldn't I own the entire business? That's what's going on in my head.
Okay.
Whereas I think what I should have done was probably leverage that because they already had a 150-person team, right? They had all these systems figured out. That would have been the smarter thing to do. But you only learn in hindsight, there's no right or wrong
Oh,
decision, I guess.
trust me, dude, you only learn by the mistakes. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think I would have felt the same way if my partner wasn't putting in the same sort of sweat that I was, right? Because then I would have been like, screw this, let's just get rid of this and start over. I don't need this
Felt
person,
like
right?
that. It felt like that at that time. But again, it may just have been my immaturity because I could have asked for certain things as well. I just didn't know better. But I don't know. I guess you just learn in hindsight.
Yeah, dude, I told you my first business. I don't even want to go into the details, but it was, I learned so many things from that failure
Hmm.
that I think they usually say your third business is where you really make it because you've made all the mistakes at this point.
Hmm.
And on the third business, your mistakes don't cost you as much. I had so many costly mistakes on my first one that the second one has been pretty good, right?
That's good. That's
Um,
good to hear.
yeah, and so I just, you're not born with any of this, right? So you make those mistakes, right? And like sometimes even like all these cliches, right? I'd rather have 1% of $1 billion company than 100% of,
Oh,
you know what
yeah,
I'm saying, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that doesn't mean anything until you kind of live a little bit of
Of
that
course. Yeah.
sort of life. But you made the decision. You got some cash out of it.
Hmm.
You decide. It sounds like you took some cash. You decide I'm not going to work really right now for a little bit. I want to go back to my writing.
Yeah.
Is that yeah, yeah? But how long does that last before you get back to work?
Yeah, so I did a bunch of writing, I did a lot of consulting, and I think just as a natural progression of things, what happened to me at that time and was that an old friend of mine who I used to work with at the gaming company called me one day and he said that I have this idea. And at that time in India, um, ride-hailing apps like Uber and Ola were really, really capturing a lot of market share. So
So
these
this has to be
guys
what,
were
2012 now, 2012,
no, a little later than
2013,
that, like 14,
14,
15 kind of
15.
time
Okay,
frame.
okay.
And these apps were sort of employing people by like the truckloads. The, they were just really, really pumping money into the ecosystem. everyone was thinking about taking an Ola or Uber to work. And he told me a very interesting problem. He said that I take a ride every day to work, and every day I talk to my driver. And I've learned that the way that this system works is there is one person who owns like 10 vehicles. He employs 10 people, which sort of do these rides, and he gives them, let's say, 1,000 rupees at the start of the day to fill, let's say, diesel or petrol. But they don't fill money for like fuel equivalent to that amount. They fill for, let's say, 600 or 700 bucks, and they pocket the rest. So can we make like a digital solution where instead of money, he actually gives out a debit card to these drivers, and then they just go and swipe that debit card, and it only works on, fuel stations. And I was
Mm.
available. I was like, okay, interesting. We could do that. And that's how that company was formed, which was we were trying to build something in the gig economy. So the first year was super hard. We were trying to build a debit solution. And as we just used to take Ola and Uber rides back and forth, trying to talk to these drivers, try and understand what the hell is happening.
They would hate you though. Like you're not their friend. You're
Yeah,
trying to
they,
take 300 rupees away from
yeah,
them.
it was extremely hard, but we realized that this isn't a mass problem. There were very few people who actually owned so many vehicles and they were doing this. Majority of them were sort of working. They are a single vehicle owner, sort of doing this to make ends meet. What we realized was a very interesting insight as we started talking to more people, which was that these drivers were given very nice incentives. So they were told that if you are on the road for another 4 hours after you finish, let's say, a 10-hour shift, you will get a certain amount as a bonus. But they would only get paid after 2 weeks. And to be on the road, they need money now so that they can actually fill up their vehicle and do the ride. So there was a working capital problem.
Those people
Um,
weren't getting cashed out at the end of the day, or they were.
yes, yes.
Uh,
So there was a credit problem and not a debit problem. And these guys were just sort of entering the formal economy for the very first time. So they didn't really have a credit score or anything like that. So the problem statement changed. And we said, instead of building a debit system, what if we built a credit system for the gig economy, and no banks want to touch these people? Like, we could be the, credit rating system for the gig economy, and we could connect the lenders to the people who need credit, and we could be the people in the middle.
it's a small
And that's how
business
that
loans,
started.
really.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's just small business loans, but it's just very vertical specific only for gig economy workers, because we sort of understood their credit cycle better and we could assess risk better,
But you have
is
to
the
find
thesis.
somebody with the cash. You weren't going to be the ones.
We can't. And legally, we
No.
can't lend as well because we're not really a licensed lender. So we had to be the tech layer that connects the two. Um, so that's how that started. And it was really, really hard, right? So just to get like so we got like the people, the lenders on board. It was all paperwork at the start. We got the people on the other side on board. Um, we finally figured out a bank that would allow us to issue a card. That took another 6 months. It's so hard to do all these
You know,
things.
the card work and the adjudication of the transactions and
Yeah,
there's a
it was a
there's a
nightmare.
piece. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's a big logistics problem, regulatory
yeah,
problem. And
yeah,
everybody has to feel like it's worth the credit, right? Like you have to pay what, 3% somewhere. Somebody's got to pay 3% somewhere.
yeah, yeah. So it was a hard problem to solve. And then at the end of the day, distribution was hard because we were actually selling, one person at a time. So we were struggling. So at that time, we had raised like a small friends and family round of about, 60, $70,000. And we were sort of surviving on that, sort of about 14, 15 months in. And that's when we sort of hit into a scheme that Uber was launching in India, and they were really competing. So what they did was they divided the drivers into three categories. They said, there'll be a gold section, a silver section, and a bronze section. And if you qualify to be in each section, you would get certain privileges. And if you were in the gold section, you would get access to this sort of club where you would have all kinds of things happening. And you would also have access to a select group of vendors that would give you exclusive services. So we said, what if we could be one of those select vendors? And we could give credit cards to people none of these guys get credit cards from banks. We could be that person. And we somehow got in touch with somebody at Uber, just a cold email or a message, and we got in, right? And I still remember being on that at that event. And we had all of these different kinds of vendors. Somebody was offering, wealth management solutions to gig economy workers. I don't know why. And we were the only one, and there was actually a line of drivers wanting to talk to us. And it felt like, this could be something here. And the executives at Uber India also saw that, this could be something. So what started off as a exclusive, offer just for select drivers slowly moved into being available for every Uber driver. So once we sort of got an approval from them, what happened was life really became better because we directly integrated into the Uber API.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened was that collections became a lot easier. So Uber, before paying the driver, would pay us. So we would get paid from source, and we didn't have to go to like so many people to collect the funds. And distribution became easy because Uber allowed us to set up a booth in every Uber store in India. So if driver comes to an
Wow.
Uber store, there would be a booth that belonged to us, and the person would be like, if you need a credit card, go over there. And that really helped us scale. And once we got that, then we got the other gig, like we got the food delivery companies and other ones as well to sort of sign up. And that's when we raised like a seed round from Omidyar. We did a $1.1 million fundraise
What was the
from
name of this
Omidyar.
company?
Is Bond Credit.
Bond Credit. So you were basically fronting you were fronting paychecks,
Yes,
essentially, yeah.
working capital loans to gig economy workers, and we were just the bridge. So we would,
What was your
um,
fee? What were you taking for each transaction you're getting?
yeah. So we would take, yeah. So we would the way the model worked is it's basically just a bidding system, just the way you would use, you know, an advertising platform. There would be a rate that the lender offers, and a credit score for the borrower, and then we would do a three-party handshake, try and find the best possible rate, the lowest possible rate, and the highest possible one for this, depending on risk. And we would charge a fee to each person. It was a flat fee. It was not a percentage fee per
So you
transaction.
weren't getting a fee at the transaction level. You were getting it to selling the card, essentially.
No, so selling, so you can have a card, but then the money on that card, the credit, is actually dispersed at a weekly level. So
Okay.
we would charge on completion of that round trip. So let's say I give a person 1,000 rupees, and that person pays me back 1,100 rupees, and I would charge both parties for it. So let's say 50 rupees, 50 rupees.
Nice.
And there's
Okay.
like a constant cycle going on. So, I mean, at its peak, we were at about 50,000 cards in India.
That's wild.
Just constantly, yeah, every 2 weeks, there would be a new round of money that goes through. It was pretty
Is
good.
that still operating?
Yeah, so funny story. So what happened was our term sheet said that in 3 years, we had to either have X dollars in revenue, or another investor coming in and actually raising a Series A round, um, and COVID hit.
Mm.
And there were no riders, there were no drivers on the road.
It all stopped.
And the fund house, the fund that we had raised money from, became extremely bearish on the gig economy. So because I mean, we did have a few term sheets in place. It's not like we didn't, but they all were not willing to invest in
No.
a business that catered to this sector.
I mean, we all knew it was going to end. We just didn't know when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that happened, and we had to sort of do a fire sale, so to say. So the investor took the tech and merged it into another portfolio company that was doing microfinance loans. And yeah, that was it.
What a
Um,
shame, man. Just the timing on that, because that
yeah,
was it. I mean, you could have been doing it then for Gojek, for Grab, for a whole slew of
indeed.
them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, I don't know, um, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing because I wouldn't be here without that. Like I don't know how to look at these things, but you are right. It's not like the gig economy um, sort of size of the market reduced. It in fact increased. It was just like a
Chris,
temporary blip.
you were
But
there, but
yeah,
it was, first of all, technically really challenging. But if the fee structures were right, then you were really helping people, right?
yes,
I mean,
it
the
worked. Yeah,
danger on these micro loans is always that usury, right? Like people are taking advantage of people on high interest rates that aren't regulated, and that's what always scares me about this stuff. But it sounds like
yeah,
you were being reasonable with everybody, so it was a
yeah,
win-win-win.
yeah. And because it wasn't sort of predatory in nature, and we weren't the ones really lending the money. Um, and largely small finance loans. I mean, at that time, it wasn't really under the radar, but now it's largely it's regulated. You can't charge a fee more than a certain amount as an interest rate, etc., etc. But it was designed to find the best possible match, and one of the criteria was to try and get you the best possible rate of interest. So it was designed to be, a win-win for everybody.
I know,
But
but it's like you had a cash printing machine at that point. Like it's really hard to design businesses where, like I always tell people all the time, if you're not making money while you're sleeping, you're not making money. If you're only
yeah,
making money when you're awake on your feet doing something, right? It's not scalable to real wealth because one day you can't be on your feet, you didn't make any money that day. But
correct.
you sort of created a cash machine there where you could just sit back once it got rolling, because every time that driver got the credit that they needed to work that week, it's like beautiful, man. Or
Yeah,
technically, yeah, some real challenges there, logistics. Yeah.
yeah. I think that I learned a lot from that experience. So, for example, I learned that, you have to be at the right place at the right time. A lot of things happen when your stars are aligned. Um, we were very early to this segment. There wasn't anybody who was catering to this segment. It worked really well. Um, but also realizes the value of, having set aside some money for a rainy day. Who would have predicted a black swan event like COVID would do this? You know, so I think a lot of lessons there, uh, and I also learned a lot in terms of just managing expectations. Investors, people. We had scaled up more than 100 people. Uh, so I learned a lot of things over there. I think it was a lot of fun. It was a very nice, fun experience. I think we were trying to do something unique and new. But I think, everything has its challenges. You can't know everything from day one. You try
No,
and
no,
reduce
no,
the
no.
risk of failure as much as possible.
It's funny because my dad said this to me when I was young, and I've passed it on to my kids. It's not about how much money you earn; it's about how much money you save.
Yeah.
If the guy next door made 50,000 a year, but he saved 40,000 of it, and you made a million, and you only got 20,000 left in the bank, who did better that
Hmm.
week, right? Like that year, right?
Correct.
It's really it's about what you save, and I've tried to tell my kids that, where
Hmm.
even no matter what jobs they were working, even if it was bartending during university, they were putting money. When COVID hit, the kids that were living on their own had no problem because they had been saving for that. They learned that lesson the right way, right? Um,
And what happens, I think, is when you raise money, it's got a very different influence on your decision making capability. Um, so while I completely agree with you that one needs to be within their limits in terms of identifying what to spend, where to spend, how to spend, but when you've sort of promised viral growth, um, now that you look back, you sort of realize the reasons for many of these decisions have have been factors like these.
it's I On my first business, I did the angel round, that initial
Hmm.
angel round. That was so stressful because you're taking money from friends and family there, to
Mm.
the point when that whole thing crashed. It took a while, but I ended up paying back like my uncle who put money in, because I couldn't sleep at night. Like eventually I
Mm,
gave him back. I said, "You're not making any money on this money, but here's your money back," right?
mm, mm,
Because there's, you know, I don't know. Like I never want to do another angel round. I think it's more stressful than taking money from the VC. I don't really care about the VC, man, but I care about my uncle, right, and friends, and
yeah.
it does. But my experience with taking money like that, other than that it's expensive, is that it's that if you don't take the right amount, you're in
Mm,
failure. So the amount of money we raised was never going to be enough. And
mm,
so instead of burning through it like we should have, you have a slow death,
mm,
which basically means that your personal finances go completely to hell,
mm-hmm,
because that's what you're using to compensate for the money you didn't raise that you really needed to be
mm.
successful here. Where I think just like you now, my second business, no raise. That's all cash flow. Like never want to be in that sort of place again at all.
It is like being on a treadmill, if you ask me. Um, you're always trying to find, the quickest way to the next. I mean, it's more about valuation than value, because to create value, you need time, which you don't have, you know. It's a very difficult situation to be in, if you ask me, because you have a ticking time bomb, 3 years, next fundraise, next valuation. So you end up doing a lot of things. And I think that was also the time at which a lot of companies in India were raising money. And that was like the cool thing to do. You would get media coverage, the whole, nine flags. So
Yeah, and you're young, so right,
yeah, it's all,
yeah.
yeah,
The,
you were
just
part
my
of that
yeah.
flow.
My problem is if I were to ever raise money again, it would be enough to get where I needed to be in 3 years from a revenue perspective, let's say. And the idea is there wouldn't be another dollar left. Like I'm
Mm,
not hoarding this. I'm using it. It's either all or nothing, man. I'm playing a casino game at this rate. It's all going in. Right?
right. And I completely agree with that. For me, I mean, if I were to do it again, I would make sure that I would find a patient long-term partner, where the money doesn't matter. And I agree with you. If I raise money, I would spend it wisely. Um, but I would make sure that we align with each other in terms of the core thesis and the timeline. And if it takes 5 years, it takes 5 years.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a shame to me because somebody should have had the insight that even if COVID was 2 years long, to just bunker in for the next 2 years because you were solving the problem. We
yeah,
weren't going to be sheltered for the rest of our lives, man. Like that didn't happen 100 years ago either, right? When we had the last pandemic. So again, hindsight's 2020, but okay, so look, so all that happens, right? COVID hits, you got to sell the business.
yeah.
It's now like say 2021, right?
Hmm.
We're talking now, we're right kind of where we are almost. Um, Tell me how Wednesday comes into play now. We got like another 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Sure.
Talk to me about Wednesday.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly when Wednesday started. We we I mean, my experience working with all of these banks, so I would go to all of these banks and try and get access to like a couple of APIs to just do a simple KYC process to onboard, let's say, a new driver. And they would take like 3 months to give us like 5 APIs, and we would keep going back to them. And I realized that, just for one application, they would have like 200 engineers working on it. And the APIs that we would get would not have any kind of semantic structure. The responses would all be different, etc., etc. And I just had that insight that, IT is just broken in the enterprise. Like these guys are phenomenal bankers, but they just don't know IT. Like they just don't know software development. Their idea is
Yeah.
just throw
Well,
people at it.
outside of the mainframe, which is solid, right? You're hiring people on the outside of that really cheaply who've never really built these systems before. I've
Mm,
seen it over. I, I I've always classified developers as either product developers or you're an IT developer.
mm,
You see, when you're an IT developer, your customer was always next to you. So you didn't care about making it rock solid because you were right there. And if it
Mhm.
broke, you, whatever, right? You just fix it because your
Yeah,
customer had the level of tolerance. It was so hard to get IT developers to move into product
yeah,
because they had to
yeah,
learn that their customer they don't know who their customer is anymore. And you can't be writing code like that. Like you just can't.
yeah,
And a lot
yeah,
of developers never able to switch
yeah,
that mindset, right? Like, and that's what you were
yeah.
experiencing for sure.
Exactly. Because the bank is now offering their internal systems as a product. Because, we need to integrate as a fintech into them to issue a card. Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. Um, so that
I
insight
saw,
led to, yeah, go ahead.
no, I saw it. My first jobs were in these sort of more IT-ish. I had a
Hmm.
guy that built an internal app. He went away for a week on vacation and it was just breaking on people's desks. And it was in VB. And I said, let me look at it. Dude, it was a mess. I said, I can't fix this. You got to wait for him to come back. When he came back to work, I said, Raul, what are you doing here, dude? I know you're a better developer than this. You know what he said to me? No, Bill, I've gone out of my way to make this impossible for anybody else to manage. So I keep my job. That's the
Interesting.
IT mentality that you're dealing
Yeah,
with. Like, I
yeah,
don't want to lose my job. This is my little kingdom. And
yeah.
so I'm going to make it so I'm the only one that can
Mm,
work this.
mm.
It's wild, right?
Yeah, it's a very different world. So anyway, so that sort of insight led to the creation of Wednesday. We said that, if we were to build this, we would probably do it with a team of two. So we said, can we build teams of engineers that would build software the same way that we did and make the same decisions that we would make as we would build these things out? And that's pretty much the start of Wednesday. It's just me and my co-founder, Mac. We've been working together for a very long time. In fact, he worked with me at my previous company. At the time he was in Singapore, he was working for a unicorn there. I sort of called him and I said, I have this idea. I feel like we can do something in, product engineering services. Just come down here. And he was crazy enough to sort of accept that idea and come. He did come
And
down to
leave
India, and
Singapore and
yeah, he
leave
left
Singapore
Singapore.
to live in
Yeah,
Pune.
yeah, yeah,
That's wild.
yeah.
Singapore's a
He left
beautiful place,
Singapore.
man.
Yeah, it's extremely beautiful, and I think he had a very nice job at working at one of the largest unicorns there in the logistics space. But he took a chance. He took a chance on a wild idea that I had that could make it or couldn't. But I think it's worked out. Um,
So I'm
that's how
curious
it
now
started.
if we get back to Wednesday here.
Yeah.
Um, how do you recruit the right people to work? Because you want to build product the way you know it needs to be built. You've built at a
Yes.
scale systems that work, right? Like you know what it takes to
Hmm.
build systems at scale, distributed, that work
Hmm.
day in and day out, right? You've done it a couple times.
Yeah.
And now you said, I want to be able to have a company that can do that at a
Mm.
people scale. But finding the
Mm.
right people, like, what are you looking for? First of all, are you going to university to source people or are you just taking resumes?
Mm.
Sort of, what are you looking for in that interview beyond tech? Because, right? I mean, obviously they have to be teachable, but what are you looking for as a person that can work at Wednesday?
We don't go to universities. I've always believed in like an inbound method of, you know, doing everything, whether it's customers, people who want to work here, everything, teammates, customers, everything. So we do a lot of meetups. We're known for the work that we do within the community here in Pune, and that has sort of led to. We also do a lot of social content. We talk about the things that we do, how we do it, etc. We've written a playbook on like how things work at Wednesday, um, and that sort of content flywheel has created like signals that the right people listen to and come. What we typically look for in the interview is not really so. I love the way my co-founder does it. He literally tells people, you can use whatever the hell you want. You can open a prompt in Replit or Bolt or Lovable or whatever you like. I do not care, right? Um, but we will build an application together, right? And he talks about an application like how a business person would. So for example, a business person would say something like, I want to build a sports betting application. So they just talk about the outcome. And now you need to sort of drill down and, identify, what is the exact user flow going to be like? Is it going to be a mobile number based OTP? Do I need to collect further information to do a KYC before he starts betting? Like, what is the betting screen? You need to ask these questions as a product engineer to identify what to build. And we look for those kinds of traits. We look for people who are not just coders, but who are people at the intersection of, design, product, and engineering, with predominant experience in engineering, but you can at least think these two functions. And you'll be surprised to what we've seen. We many a times find people who are just stuck at installing NPM packages for 45 minutes and the interview is over. And they're just not the right fit, you know. And we've also found people who've actually gone through building multiple screens and just constantly talking and asking and probing and trying to see, okay, what's the version one going to be like? What's the most important thing that you want to achieve here? And those are the kinds of people that we like to work with, because that's actually how you build a product, in an iterative, collaborative manner where everybody comes with ideas and then you prioritize. And that's primarily how the team has been built.
How many teams are you helping to manage? Because I imagine your influence on the customer work is important.
um, so I've been blessed to have a very good team, so I only work with 3 people right now, and then they in turn work with multiple other people. And think this is not just something that has been like that from day one. It has evolved to be like that. So I'm not involved in any of the customer work at this moment. The teams are able to manage these things themselves, which is a good place to be in. We've created a very nice reporting structure, account management structure. We have NPS scores that come in from customers. So all of those kind of systems are now in place. It's become a lot more manageable.
I'm also interested if you're pushing your teams to use more AI tooling that's out there and discover it.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
talk
I'm
about
all
that.
for it. Um, we believe that, um, AI is going to fundamentally change the way software engineering or product engineering is done. And um, the cost to complete something is going to go drastically low. And if that happens, then you're going to want to work with people who aren't just in the realm of software development, but they're also thinking about design, product engineering, the whole, workflow. So we are extremely, extremely encouraging, in terms of like to our team to use it. And I think they use it across all the projects. I haven't seen a single project where they don't use Cursor or Let Replete or one of these things.
Yeah, I was going
And
to
it
ask
does
you what
really
what
change.
technology are you sort of high on? I use Copilot. I'm all doing back end Go development. Um, I don't like that next gen thing they do, but the code completions, sometimes it's in my way. But I'd fight you right now if you told me to turn it off, right? So, and I don't do front end stuff. I think there's a lot more tooling out there. I just went to Google I/O, so I saw the AI Studio, the
Hmm.
new thing called Jules. I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of stuff there for front end. But what tools are you sort of high on right now for the
So I
work you're doing?
think, yeah, so the front end, we're doing a lot. If it's like an existing code base, we probably do something like Cursor. Um, we do a lot of for landing pages. We've stuck to like Lovable. I think that's worked well for us. We're also doing a lot of like GitHub. Like we're doing started a few things with Codex, where we're sort of giving it tasks, and it's also doing the reviews for us. We have used Copilot. We've bought the subscription for everybody. Is a huge advantage. I think it's really a game changer for us. Saved so much time and brought so much innovation into the project that the entire customer experience has changed. Customers are talking to us more strategically than ever before because there's so
Beautiful.
much time now to do that.
Yeah, what I've been trying to tell developers more and more is that these tools don't have intelligence, but they need an intelligence to work them. And
Correct.
you are the intelligence. You are the
Correct.
software engineer. You're telling these tools what to do, and you're identifying what the tool should be doing next. The tool can't do that for itself. So don't be afraid of it, right? Your job might change a little bit, but at the end of the day, there's still a software engineer figuring out what needs to be done, when, where, how, and why. So don't be afraid, embrace the tooling. And those engineers that know how to use this tooling are the ones that are going to be working in 3 to 5 years. The ones that don't, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've aged out, and that's it.
Yeah. I completely agree. I don't buy the entire idea of, these AI agents replacing product engineers. I don't think that's going to happen. You're still going to need somebody who actually understands the system to use it. What I do sort of question is just the number of people that you need. So I think team sizes is going to drastically reduce. I mean, just when I look at the work that we're doing, we're able to do a lot more with a smaller team size now than, let's say, 3 years ago.
You see, I'm not convinced of that, Ali, because I think what's going to happen is you always have a set of features that you want to get to. You're always trying to innovate. And so I don't know if team sizes necessarily need to go down if you're a company that's trying to innovate at the level, even today, right? Think of your backlog today, right? There's no reason to reduce your team size if you're able to innovate faster than your competitor. And so I don't know if I buy the team size reduction for companies that are really innovating.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. If there is a backlog, I just don't. I guess what I'm trying to say is, for the same quantum of work, I may size a smaller team now than before. But if there,
so
if, yeah,
so why not take the heads? So why not take the 2 heads you took off of that team and have them start working on those features you wouldn't have been able to get to for another 3 or 4 months? And I think that's what's really going to happen.
Yeah, if that's identified, then yeah, more power to you. I think that makes sense. And
why
I think
not?
Doing more with less, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
why not?
That's perfectly fine.
Your budgets are already in place. It's not like, like the budgets are there already. That you have the heads. Why not just do more, right? So I don't know. That's the way. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't think you're going to see. We already had the mass reduction after COVID, right? I just don't. I don't think that. We'll see. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But if you're a software engineer right now and you're not learning the best tooling for where you are, front end there's a lot of tooling, back end there's a little, and more will come. Then I think you're falling behind, and you're going to lose your ability to do this craft. So, all right, we are totally out of time, Ali. So we'll put this in the show notes. But if anybody wanted to reach out, ask any questions, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a founder, if you're looking for any of our services, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Ali Hafizji. You can also reach out to the contact us page on our website, which is wednesday.is. I'm happy to chat.
Brilliant. Hey, man, thank you for hanging out with me for the hour and a half that we had together. I really appreciate it. Super interesting story, first of all, and be interesting to see how Wednesday does with this innovative pricing model.
I look forward to staying in touch, Bill.
All right, great. So this is Bill Kennedy and Ali signing off from the Ardan Labs podcast. We hope to see everybody again real soon.